Okay, I'm well aware that it's the middle of Jan, but I've been procrastinating this video because I have so much from 2020 that I want to share. So here is a review of my 2020. I think it's super important to reflect and look over all your photos and videos, so I thought it'd be cool to make a little video out of it. We're doing it. We're reviewing 2020, and it really did take us on a ride. To me, 2020 was filled with most amazing experiences and the moments that made the pit of my stomach cry. So January started off a little bit strange in Australia with all of the bushfires, of course. But I did my first ever TikTok and went to the tennis, experienced a lot of the summer, which was a really good experience, and saw some live acts before, of course, COVID took place. For me, it was a time of enjoying the sun and preparing for what I thought was going to be a really huge 2020 for me. Don't get me wrong, it was. Feb was a little bit quiet with work because we had a massive outage. I did my first ever branding shoot and saw the amazing Ziggy Alberts live. March started off really strong. I had my first ever public speaking event, which was such an incredible experience. I met my business coach for the first time, Ruby Lee, and it was the beginning of coronavirus, which was fine because I made the most of the beginning of March before we went into lockdown. I thought this was going to be the last time I went to Wilson's prom before setting off on my world trip, and I had a birthday just before we weren't allowed to see our friends again, which was just such an special experience for me. I was just so grateful that I got to do that before lockdown really started to take place. And of course, the toilet paper started to become quite low. So April was filled with lots of Zooms with friends. I was living by myself actually in Melbourne, so I talked to myself a lot.
Thought I'd keep it as real as possible. Do a bit of walk chat. Yeah, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? It's really nice to see it.
Also had at-home concerts were a thing.
Okay,
and I did my first branding shoot into what I'm doing right now. I'll take the camera out. That's where I'm holding the phone. It's on this. And it's clipped to here and plugged into here so that I can have the Lumi light on. This is, excuse my language, this is fucking ridiculous. But I'm actually having so much fun. I'm really having fun. I can't wait to see what I produce. As you can see, the pictures turned out amazing. So good. Look at that. I was exhausted. But no, I actually got some really good shots for my business, which was really good for lockdown.
Photo shoot over. Forgot I hadn't eaten. It's hard being a model. You get so busy you forget to eat. Anyway. I think that went pretty well. I have to ask the photographer later. See what they think.
Things started to get a little bit scary when you were lining up for groceries, but I did my first ever online workshop, which was amazing. In May, I left Melbourne and headed back home to Gippsland, a small town called Yallourn North. I did my first ever full-time week and started part-time work for my current employer, and enjoyed a little bit of freedom as restrictions started to lift at the end of May with a beautiful beach trip, which was just so needed after being in lockdown, especially on my own for 6 weeks. Again, I did another branding shoot with my friend, shout out to Hayley, because you don't realize how much photos you need for your business. June, restrictions really started to lift, and we had a birthday party for my good friend Brittany. And I took a trip back down to Melbourne for my first time since I moved. Of course, it was only a short trip for a doctor's appointment, but it just, even traveling on public transport was just such a feeling of freedom. In my business, I started to work really heavily on scaling the coaching side of my business and getting more retainer clients. In July, it got to the point where it was time to leave my full-time job. I got so many beautiful flowers and just so much celebration from my friends as, we could still sort of do things before the second wave of coronavirus came. But yeah, leaving my 9 to 5 was one of the biggest achievements I had for 2020. And just thinking back now, I can't believe that I did it during a pandemic. So it was a really, really special experience. And then, of course, after this weekend, pretty much we went back into lockdown, but that's fine. Working for myself took a lot to get used to. I had a lot of energy lows. This was me sleeping in and being really happy about it because I could wake up whatever time I wanted. It was working from bed a lot, trying to get into the groove, taking lots of day trips with friends, which was nice to have weekends off because I hadn't really been able to have weekends off in my business because I was working full-time or working for another employer. So yeah, as I said, this was the last outing before we went back into lockdown. August was lockdown and masks were mandatory. I started a bit of a health kick. Now, I've done a whole video on this, but started to drink turmeric to help me get my period back. A lot of outdoor walking and working with my fitness coach. Shout out to Lizette, who I had an amazing experience with and I'm still working with to this day. I picked up some new hobbies of art, colouring in. This was probably my biggest achievement. And I started Paint by Numbers, which for an update is still not finished. September was lockdown still, and I did my own branding shoot, again at home. As I said, loads of content needed. And when you're at home, it can be quite boring. So I just took lots of photos of myself. But then finally, October, we come back out of lockdown and we could go on day trips. So I went on an overnight trip with my parents to the beautiful Malakuta, which was impacted by the bushfires in January. So it was really nice to get out and be by the water, be by the beach. And this is sort of when it's cemented for me that I need to live by the beach. I've never lived by the beach before, so this sort of cemented it for me that I needed to get out as soon as the borders opened. So it was a really nice weekend. This was where the famous Reels was created with my parents, as you can see. They are just so amazing, so good. And then, of course, as we're coming out of lockdown, it was time to catch up with friends. So we had a really nice dinner and drinks with my besties, which was really fun. And then I went back into lockdown because I had a procedure I needed to get done, so I needed to do a COVID test. So the gyms still weren't open at this point, but that was day one of me doing my at-home workout and getting the COVID test and isolating myself. I was doing handstands in the garden because really I was just a little bit bored and trying to get active. But of course I was only in isolation for a week. Then it was another day trip again with my friend Pietro, shout out. We knew we were traveling to Sydney together, so we thought we'd go away for the weekend to see if we liked each other and could handle road tripping. November, the gyms opened again, and I took a road trip for the last time to Wilson's Prom. As you saw in March, I thought that was the last time I was going, but this was definitely the last time for a while as I knew I was heading off to Sydney on my digital nomad journey. We climbed what was called Mount Bishop, which is a beautiful mountain. There is Mount Oberon and Mount Bishop at Wilson's Prom, which are quite famous. The views are just incredible. And I think I did a vlog on this, but I'm terrified of birds. And as you'll see now, the birds started to attack us, which was really not fun. Then it was time to start packing up my life, sorting through all of the clothes that I had to take with me and get organised for travelling to Sydney. I'd set a date of December 5 to head off, so yep, it was time to deal with all of the things. So packing took me, of course, here you go. I was trying to be a minimalist in 2020, so this was me finally becoming a minimalist and getting rid of all of the things. I spent a lot of time with family. That's my dad, Wayno, showing the dance again. Look at him go. Oh, this makes me so happy. I miss you. So, of course, over the course of 2020, I did lots of coaching and had my last coaching call with the amazing Ruby Lee. I went on some road trips with friends to just see little parts of Victoria that I hadn't seen. And this was the Dandenong Ranges. This was called Alfred Nicholson Park, which is really beautiful. I caught up with friends and lots of last dinners and catching up. I also did some dog sitting over the time, which I have a vlog on as well. This is them sleeping, which was great when they were sleeping. It's little Bossy and little Jeremy, my brother and his partner's dogs. And I tried to film a vlog, which of course, didn't work out for me. Then I went down to Melbourne for the last time before heading off to Sydney to catch up with my old work. I stayed in this really beautiful apartment on my own. It was just such a nice time to have a bit of freedom, as obviously lockdown was coming out. I just love Melbourne so much. It is honestly my favourite city. And then, of course, it was more packing, getting ready to leave. These backpack bags, lifesavers, love them so much. And then it was time to leave. So, this was me doing a walkthrough of my room and saying goodbye to all my things. Pietro and I took off, headed to New South Wales, stayed in this really nice Airbnb in Pambula, which my auntie was lucky enough to let us stay in, which was really beautiful, probably haunted, but beautiful. And then it was off. We spent 2 nights in Pambula before heading off to Sydney. And this is Maroubra, my new home now, which is so crazy looking back and thinking I had no idea where I was and my whole sense of bearings were completely gone, but now I go there a lot. And before leaving there, I stayed with my good friend Ken, who was kind enough to take us in. And we did a lot of exploring over that week, going to Bondi, seeing the sights of Sydney, staying really close to the city in Rushcutters Bay before heading out to my new house in Maroubra, which I currently live in now. But it was just it was good to take advantage of the good weather because there were some hints of not quite good weather. But just settling in. But, as we know, COVID followed me, which is fine. That's okay. But Ken and I had a really fun time creating content together. We did our own reels. We did multiple reels, actually. And I just, spent a lot of time connecting with all of the people that I had made beautiful relationships with online but had never actually met. So it was really fun to spend time with them, get to know them on a deeper level, have lunch together, see the sights of Sydney together. And I just really loved every minute of that settling in period in Sydney. Then, of course, it was time to move into my new home with Leanne and her partner, Marcelo, who I'll be staying with. We moved at 10 o'clock at night, which is fine. No problems at all. But then I spent a lot of time exploring my new home in Maroubra, which is probably about 7 or 8 k's out of the city, which is perfect, right near the beach. Of course, we had a drought of not great weather, but that was fine. And I spent my first Christmas not at home with my family, which was a really interesting experience, but Leanne and her family made me feel really welcome, and you know, it was really nice to spend it with a different family and, you know, explore a different part of the world. And this was an amazing street of beautiful Christmas lights, which I was so glad I got to witness. That was a giant Santa. And then I did, you know, FaceTime with my family on Christmas morning, which was, of course, a really nice experience. And it was really good to just relax on Christmas Day and not rush everywhere. And it was really fun. And then I went karaokeing with Ken.
We're beautiful like diamonds in the sky. I'm too high, so alive.
And that pretty much leads us to the end of 2020. I'm so excited for what 2021 will bring me.